So it is in that perspective, NEP 2020 has becomes a significant and different policy that the country has seen till date. So it is from that perspective, we are trying to understand that. And I hope that each one of you might have gone through the new education policy, which is a 66-page document, which is available on the Ministry of Education website or any other educational organization websites. It is present. You can download them and try to read them if you have not read it. If you have understood, if you have gone through that, let us reflect together, try to understand what it means in letter and spirit, and try to see what they are in the present context. Okay. So with that, I am going to discuss this. So in the first session, I'll be talking about the diversity and the inclusive education and its nature to certain extent. And in the second session, I'll be talking about the inclusive education, even in the higher educational institutional level. So it is in that perspective, we'll try to see how exactly we start doing it. Okay, so with that background, let us have a discussion on the student diversity and inclusive education. So what does this National Education Policy 2020 has? So this policy has 4 parts, and each part is being given a different areas or themes with different chapters. So part 1 talks about school education. In that there are 1 to 8 chapters concerning to various aspects of school educations are highlighted. In part 2, it deals with higher education, and it has got issues from 9 to 19 chapters are there in higher education sector. And in part 3, other key areas of focus, which is common for across school education and higher education. So it has chapters from 20 to 24 chapters are there. In chapter 4, making it happen. So that means here it tries to see how this can be implemented in a very meaningful manner. So from 25 to 27, these chapters are there. So entirely, this policy talks about from school education to higher education area. And it also talks about how we can bring the transitions from school education to higher education in all sectors, and which is that common areas that we need to understand. So what does that school education contains? 8 chapters are given like this. The first chapter talks about early childhood care and education. So which has become now part of the formal schooling structure, because the policy talks about the structural reforms. It is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So bringing the foundation learning or the Anganwadis or Balavatikas into formal school structure. So hence, early child care and education is been considered as the important aspect in this particular aspect. The second one talks about foundational literacy and numeracy, where emphasis is on building a strong foundation in building the literacy programs and the numeracy program. So that is emphasis is on language development as well as mathematical educational development. So these two are essential for any human being for his day-to-day life activities, and hence it has been stressed in chapter 2. The chapter 3 talks about how do we access and retain the child at all levels. So we know that the research study also show that, so when the child moves from one stage to the next stage, during the transition from one stage to the next stage, there is a varieties of dropouts that has been there. So we can see less percentage of dropout from primary level to upper primary level. And from upper primary to secondary level, we see there is a huge gap. And from senior secondary to higher education, there is a drop of nearly 50 to 60% dropouts are there. So that means here, all children doesn't want to continue in the same educational profiles itself. They would diversify themselves at different stage. And what is the way in which we try to retain them? One comes for seeking education in whatever level it is. So it is in that perspective The chapter 3 deals with that. The chapter 4 talks about curriculum and pedagogy in schools. So it is prescribes what kind of curricular activities, co-curricular activities must be there. And it also talks about how those needs to be delivered. So by highlighting varieties of pedagogical methods, including art integrated learning, including physical and health education integration, integrating the toy-based pedagogy, integrating the activity-based learning, so integrating the experiential-based learning, project-based learning. So all these activity pedagogical approaches have been highlighted. So which says that, so we need to shift our approach of teaching the knowledge in different areas, considering the learners' initiatives and how learners should be made the part and parcel of this entire learning activities. And the fifth chapter focuses on teachers. It tells about what is the qualification of the teacher and how is that teacher, when is inducted into the system, how he needs to be promoted professionally through varieties of in-service program activities, including the policy talks about at least in an academic year, 50 hours must be devoted for the individual professional development. So it is talking about continuous professional developmental activity, either through online program mode or through offline program mode. One can has to devote the time and see that professionally is also progressing. So it is talks about all those things. It talks about various teacher education program that is there. And as you know that the policy insists that teacher education program of earlier varieties like DLED program, nursery training programs, all of them needs to be managed. And it has to be only 4-year integrated teacher education program is in the anvil. It has been already put into practice as an experimental basis. And by 2030, the teacher recruitment will happen only based on the ITEP 4 years integrated teacher education programs only. So that is what the policy is envisaging and insisting. So it is in that way what are the other components that the policy visualizes for the teacher and how the teacher should able to get that status which was earlier known given to the teaching community. And the policy also aims at making the India and the teachers as Vishwaguru, and how is that vision can be attained in what quality teacher education programs that we need to envisage and try to look at. And the chapter 6 talks about equitable inclusive education. It is learning for all. So which is the topic of our discussion. It talks about equity and the equality and how to bring in the inclusive education in all spheres and making education for all and learning for all is a possible. So that is what the chapter 6 focuses on. The chapter 7 focuses on convergence through school complexes and clusters. So how is this possibility can be explored? So if it is not happening in a school, can we explore the cluster of schools which are named as school complexes? Okay, in some state they may be calling it as model schools. So how is those need to be empowered and how is that resources need to be channelized by the respective schools and empower mutually each others. So that is what the convergence through school complexes and clusters is talking about. And finally, the 8th chapter talks about standard setting and accreditation for school education. So as we know that in higher education, there is an accreditation body called NAC, National Accreditation and Assessment Council, which gives the accreditation based on the grade points. And based on that, we see that it is accreditation is only to ensure the sustaining of the quality and trying to retain the quality perspective of education in all walks of life. So it is in that way, this is there at higher education. Now the policy is talking about bringing those kinds of accreditation mechanism at the school level also. And those accreditation will set a standard mark or benchmark for others to follow and emulate. So it is in that way the school education has these 8 chapters in it. Now in higher education, so there are, as we said, 9 to 19 are there. One is talks about quality universities and colleges, how we can able to do that. a new and forward-looking vision for higher education system. So as you know that in all higher education programs, all universities, the policy insists that they must introduce the 4-year degree courses, integrated degree courses must be there in all disciplines. No single degree is to be followed or embraced. So we need to go for multidisciplinary approach in a multicultural way that we need to look at it. Then institutional restructuring and consolidation, if the institutions are in a different shapes, not able to adhere to the given conditions, then restructuring of those can be looked at it and consolidation can happen. The chapter 11 talks about moving towards a more holistic education. So whatever education we get, even in higher education, must enable them to become holistic person through having holistic education, having multiple disciplinary approach, and having multiple way of looking at the same thing. So it enhances the one's own deeper understanding. How is that we can able to do that? Then optimal learning environments and support for students. So that is creating the varieties of supportive learning environments in terms of promoting the library activities, creating the laboratory facilities, okay, creating the computer programs that are available. So like this, how do you create the learning environment and support for the students? Next, motivated, energized, and capable faculty. So it also talks about having the faculty with the desirable qualifications and aptitude and the competency to deal with that. So how do we do that? And how do we motivate them who are already in the system by giving varieties of other programs that are there? Then finally, it talks about equity and inclusion in higher education. The same thing we saw as a chapter 6 in school education. It is now being carried forward even at the higher education. How those factors are going to be looked at in higher education also. Then it talks about 15, talks about the teacher education. So there in the school education, we only talk about teachers. Here we talk about teacher education because all our teacher education programs comes under higher education institutions. So how this has to be looked at it. Reimagining vocational education. So here it talks about our education must enhance them to develop the related skills in the various disciplines that they are going to learn. So it is in that perspective, our education must be oriented with hands-on activities and perspective so that through those activities, vocational education can also be promoted and individual can become self-entrepreneur in the days to come. Then the professional education. So we talk about only the medicines and engineering and even the teaching is also a professional education, how we need to look at it. And then promoting high quality research. So now researchers have been carried out by various universities in various disciplines. So in that, how do we bring about quality perspective in that? So the policy for that talks about creating a national research foundation through which the research funding is going to be done. It is not by multiple agencies. It is going to be a single window agency called National Research Foundation through which the fundings for all kinds of research is going to be done. Then effective governance and leadership for higher education institutions. So that means here, whoever is the leaders in various departments or the vice chancellors or the registrars, even for them, the governance related, management related, leadership related programs, activities are being envisaged, and this needs to be looked at. Then 20th talks about transforming the regulatory system of higher education. Now we know that at present, now we have got UGC, which takes care of higher education system. But the education, when you come to teacher education, it is the NCTE. So there are multiple agencies. Even if you come to professional education of medicine, it is the medical council which takes care of. If you go to the law discipline, so it is Bar Council of India, which is the regulatory institutions. So like that, there are multiple regulatory systems are there. So this policy talks about bringing all regulatory system into one umbrella and which is called as National Council for Higher Education. So it is one single agency through which all other regulating body function. And it is in that way they want to simplify the regulatory system in higher education system. So it is in that perspective, the policy delves in depth into all these aspects from school education to higher education. So now let us focus on our perspective. It is the diversity. First, I talk about the diversity. Then we move into the how do we make with all the diversities in place, how do you make them to become more inclusive? So it is in that way we try to talk about it. So diversity from different perspective, it has got different meanings. Okay, so we have might have understood them in different dimensions. So these are the definitions given by different disciplines orient. The first definition says that it is the state of being diverse. So if you look at our own self, we are not similar to each ourselves. So for example, we may be comfortable using the right hand to the maximum extent, but in the same way, we cannot use the left hand. Okay. So it is in that way we find there is diversity within the individual itself. So it is being different from the group is what is being treated as diverse. Second definition, it talks about it is defined as the condition comprising several distinct elements. So it is not only diverse in one factor, it may be multiple factors. Like for example, if you look at our hand and the fingers, all of them are not in same shape and same length. So they are different and each of them are used for different purposes. So that means here, even within an element, within a palm itself, we have a different elements and this gives rise to varieties of diversity. So it is in that perspective, they say that it is a condition comprising several distinct elements. So if you come to the biology perspective, it says that it is the extent of variation of living things found in specific ecosystem. So that is specific ecosystem means it is in a defined geographical area. Within the defined geographical area itself, we find different variations in the living beings itself. If you are able to see that in an ecosystem, then we say it is a diversity. The fact of there being many different things existing together in a group is also treated as a diversity. So it is from the social science perspective, sociology. It talks about the fact of there being many different things existing together in a group. So if you consider human being as one group, so we have different factors in that. So we can classify the people based on the social status, based on geographical living conditions, and based on the belief system that they follow. So like this, we can try to see there is a diversity in existing in a particular group also. The fact of many different types of things or people being included in something, range of many things or people is called as diversity. Okay, different types of things are people. So if you are able to bring them is to be looked at it very clearly, bringing them with a predetermined intentions. If you are trying to do then also it is called as diversity. So this is the meaning in general from different perspectives. Now, if we come to the classroom, what is the diversity that we are able to see in the classroom? So we know that school is a miniature of society. And whatever is the characteristics that we see in the society, all of them we are able to visualize in our classroom conditions also. So it is in that diversity. So this we can try to see in terms of the race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, physical abilities, religious belief, political belief, or other ideologies are the dimensions of diversity. Okay. So it is in general, they talk about the diversity can be seen in these perspectives. Yes, sorry for the technical glitch. So here diversity is in learning process among the learners. If you are trying to look at it, each learners have their own styles of learning. So these styles are the predominant sense organs that they use and depend on for their learning activity. So in terms of their learning styles, we have three categories of learners. One is the agile learner who listen to you or the lectures and try to make meaning out of that. There are some who wants to see and then listen to you, so they are called as visual learners. And the third one, they want to touch, feel, see, so they are tactile learners. So in each of these kinds of learning styles, they use the sense organ, one or two sense organs very predominantly. In agile learners, they use only listening skills and they develop listening skill to a large extent. In visual learners, they use both vision as well as listening. So here visionary as well as the listening skills both are developed. And in tactile learners, so we can see that they are able to feel, touch, and then try to make a meaning out of that. So it is from their learning. So it is the time required for them to comprehend, make a meaning out of the learning is what we mean by pace of learning. And if you want them to learn in an activity oriented manner, then how do they participate in that? Do they show voluntary participation activity or they are showing involuntary participation behaviors? So it is in that way we can say active learning or passive learners, what they are, how they are able to do that. So it is in that way also they differ. Then the differences is caused by their learning methods that teacher uses and the methods that the students try to adopt it. So we have different kinds of learning methods that are there. Among them, majorly we use inductive method, where we are trying to lead them from known situation to unknown situations. And in the deductive approach, we take from the accepted statements and keep on deducing to a specific situation and see, we verify the reality, and then we say, therefore, the accepted statement is also true. Then we also talk about discovery learning, where we give opportunity for them to explore knowledge on their own and try to come out with their own understandings. That is discovery. Then problem solving approach, where problems are given to them based on their acquired knowledge and the strategies and techniques that they have. They need to solve the problem. So we have different methods. Apart from that, we have other methods also. We can use them in single factors or we can use them in combinations also. So by using that also, we see that there are varieties of learning methods that we use to teach a different kind of concepts. And even that also makes it for variations and the diversities in learning. And finally, when we come to assessment procedures that we follow, some are very familiar, are very easy with the oral assessment strategy because questions are asked orally and the response is given orally, and therefore they no need to write. So they think that oral responses are more better. So such type of students are not good in writing. So for them, they prefer oral, and some not good in giving oral responses. So they are good in writing it. So they want a written activity test to be given, paper pencil test. And some of them are not good in either in oral or written. They are able to demonstrate it by performing it. So we have performance based test also. So for different situations, different patterns, different assessment procedures are used. So it is in that way also we see that there are varieties of diversities that is happening in the learning process also, and which you are able to see among the learners. Then the policy now talks about the important concept of SEDG. So that is socially economically disadvantaged groups. Okay, SEDG. So it is socio-economically disadvantaged groups. And these are broadly classified. There are many groups in that they are classified into many of them. One is the gender identities. First disadvantaged group that is treated under them is the gender identities. So, and it focuses majorly on the female and transgender individuals. So that is women empowerment, and treating the transgender as equal to any other gender is also one of the important factors. So it is in that perspective, you can see that now gender sensitization, gender awareness programs are being given much importance. Even when we quote examples, we have to take the characteristics of both male and female. So it should not be male dominated or female dominated. We have to give the equal treatment. So it is in that way we are going to see the gender identities that is considered as one of the disadvantaged groups. Second one is socio-cultural identities. So which socio background you are, which cultural practices that you are is treated as socio-cultural identities. Under this, the policy says that it is scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, OBCs, and minorities are clubbed under socio-culture identities. Okay, so that is the new change that we have to look at it. Then geographical identities, it is the students who are coming from the village or from the small town or from the aspirational districts. What are these aspirational districts? So these districts are identified by Government of India across the country. Even in Karnataka, two districts have been identified as aspirational district. One is the Raichur, another is Yadgir. Okay, so that means here, why they are calling it as aspirational districts? They are, if you compare them on various parameters, including education, including the social conditions, including the economic conditions, in all parameters, they lag behind. They are not, performance is not in the expected level. So therefore, the government of India wants them to change, transform into more advanced districts with the state competent districts also. So it is in that way, all energies, all schemes are channelized to make that district to become more advanced and go to the next higher levels. So it is in that way they have been labeled as aspirational districts. So these kinds of districts are identified in every states and they are given more attention so that in all parameters these works are being done and educational level is also going to be increased. So that is the one thing. Another group that is to be considered is the disabilities. So here disabilities, it talks about, the policy talks about only not the physical disability or the visual disabilities or mental retarded. Even it also talks about learning disabilities. Okay, that means here we are talking about the cognitive disabilities also. Earlier we had the epilepsy or the cerebral palsy, autisms as one of them. Now it is going deeper into that and saying we have to include the learning disabilities also, which we are going to look at. Then the socio-economic conditions of the people is also to be considered under disadvantaged group. Among them, they think that it is the migrant communities, the people who migrate seasonally or from one state to another state, look searching for jobs. So these are migrant communities. When they are migrating and they are living in different conditions, their economic power will not be increased automatically, but over a period of time, they may get the economic power. So that is also treated. Then low income households, vulnerable situation sections of the society, victims of or children of victims of trafficking. So it is child trafficking is a much a bigger issue. So it is where the children are kidnapped, taken into different states or different places, and they are made to become beggars, child beggars, or it is orphans. All of them are leads to many other social disaster conditions. All of them are treated as the socio-economic condition people. So including urban, those who are there in urban areas and the urban poor is also considered under socio-economic conditions. So it is from this perspective, you can see that the central government has created economically weaker section and has been given 1% of the reservation quota for such children for their academic admissions and other things. So it is in that way. So this socio-economically disadvantaged group as these five groups as coming under them, and they want to empower them socially as well as economically also. It is from that perspective they have named it as socio-economically disadvantaged groups. Then we move on to our concern here, equitable and inclusive education, learning for all. So this is the sixth chapter in NEP, which runs from 6.1 to 6.20. It is those major issues have been elaborately discussed here. Now I have tried to give them in captions here and try to express them in depth as possible. So it is 6.1 talks about it believes that education is the single greatest tool for achieving social justice and equality. So it is not talking about the legal justice, it is talking about the social justice. So that is different sections of the society has to get the education, and it is through only education we can bring some kind of equality among the different social group. So it is through education they need to be empowered. So that is the essence of the first statement the policy makes. Then inclusive and equitable education. It talks about for getting that, what is the measure that we need to do? One is we need to have inclusive and equitable education. That means our education should become inclusive and it must be available equitably for all kinds of sections of the people in the country. Okay. So while it is indeed an essential goal in its own right, it is also achieving an inclusive and equitable society in which every citizen has the opportunity to develop and also contribute to the nation. So each one has the ability to get access to that, try to empower themselves, develop the competencies, and again contribute to the country in whichever manner they are able to do it in the way they feel appropriate. Then the 6.3 talks about critical problems and recommendation regarding ECCE, foundational literacy and numeracy, access, enrollment, attendance. All of them which are discussed in the earlier chapters need to be looked at once again. And in all those cases, we have to look at underrepresented and disadvantaged groups. Why? Because early child education, now it has been run by Ministry of Women and Child Welfare Department. Now that has to be merged with the Education Department, and that requires a synergy between the two departments and also formalizing it to become a part of the school education. So when you are going to do that, then the accessibility for such children, enrollment of them and retention of that must has to be looked at it. Whenever you are trying to look at it, we need to consider the underrepresented and disadvantaged groups to the maximum extent. So 6.4, it talks about there has been various successful policies and schemes, okay, such as scholarships that are there, conditional cash transfers to incentivize parents to send their children to school, providing bicycles for transport, etc., that have significantly increased participation of SCDGs in the school system in certain areas. So we know that many of the things have been already there. Like for example, midday meal program. So in Karnataka, apart from midday meal program, we have Kshira Bhagya. Apart from that, for empowering the girl child education, the bicycles are given. Okay, like that, there are many government programs and skills which are there, and again, they also give the varieties of scholarships to them. So, scholarship given by the Social Welfare Department, scholarship given by the Backward Community Department. So, like this, all these things are there. It needs to be significantly increased so that the group of this disadvantaged group will actively participate and try to get the benefit of the education. Okay, these successful policies and schemes must be significantly strengthened across the country. So that means whichever policy which is already there in place and whichever policy is giving a positive reply or a positive result to us, that needs to be continued. If there are any policy, any schemes which is not supporting the social group, and if it is not giving an expected result, then such schemes must be dropped. So that is what the policy is talking about. So whichever schemes are there, we need to follow that it need to be strengthened if it is giving a positive result. If it is not, that needs to be dropped. The 6.5, it will also be essential to take into account research that ascertains which measures are effective for certain SEDGC. Okay, so that means here you cannot implement the program based on personal opinions or the group opinions. So there must be a research being carried out on those particular aspects. Based on the research findings only, you are able to carry out, bring out any other new schemes that is required for the SEDG group. So it also says, for example, the policy also quotes providing bicycles, organizing cycling and walking groups to provide access to schools have been shown to be particularly powerful methods in increasing the participation of female students even at lesser distances because of the safety benefits and comfort to parents that they bring or that they produce. So it is these kinds of initiative that we can do. Like for example, walking groups. It is to develop their physical stamina and also develop their physical health system. So it is in that way they are good. And even cycling is given to the girl child so that she can come on her own in the given time and she can go back home in a stipulated time frame. And therefore, there is no threat to her safety and security for accessing the school. So at the convenient way, she can come to school and she can go back. So for doing that, the policy says there must be some research evidences. Based on this, the schemes can be implemented. And it also talks about one-on-one teachers and tutors, peer tutoring, open schooling, appropriate infrastructure, and technological interventions to ensure access can be particularly effective for certain group of disabilities. So now it is talking about the disability sector of the people. As we know that disabilities are being listed out under RPWD Act. So there are 21 disabilities that are there. So to cater to that 21 disabilities, we should have these kinds of mechanism the policy is talking about. One-on-one teacher means it is one-to-one interaction, a one teacher for one student. Second one is peer tutoring. The group of students of the same age mate from the same class, they are going to talk with each other. And if the child wants to do it in a non-formal way, he can go to open schooling. Okay, so all these things can be there, and he can also use of the technological interventions that are available to us. So he can take up any of the online courses if he feels he is not comfortable coming to formal schools system. So he can go to open schooling and try to do that. So there must be varieties of alternatives must be available for even disabled child also. So you cannot say it's not coming to formal school means it is not my responsibility. It is the responsibility of the entire society and the system. So it is in that way, this needs to be looked at very seriously. Second, and that the policy also talks about schools providing quality early child care education reap the greatest dividends for children who come from families of economically disadvantaged group. Okay, so that means here, if the school has early child care education system within it, then easily the enrollment into the first stand will not be an issue. Okay, now many schools are closing in Karnataka because they are not having adequate number of students for their enrollment. So there are less than 5, less than 10 in the schools. So therefore, schools are likely to be closed or they are likely to be shifted into a nearby schools. Why is this? To avoid that, they say in the same school, if the Anganwadis are there or Balavatikas are there, okay, in the same school, then the same child will easily get transformed into first standard and their enrollment issues will not be a major problem. And again, counselors and well-trained social workers that work with and connect with the parents, school teachers to improve attendance and learning outcomes have to be especially effective for children in urban poor areas. Okay, so it talks about additional facilities that needs to be created in schools. It is not only the teachers who has to be there in the schools. Even it demands a counselor with trained counselors must be there, having adequate knowledge in the respective areas. And if they have any child going to them, having a problems with them, he can counsel them and give the varieties of suggestions and strategies which empower them to overcome. So that is the role of counselor they do. And for that, even we should have a social workers who can support the school system and where he acts as an agent between the school and the society and is able to communicate what society demands and what school is able to do it. So there must be an interconnection. So that means a school cannot work in isolation. It has to work in collaboration with different agencies. That is what is the policy is emphasizing and it is talking about. And if you do all these kinds of facilities are provided, the policy assures that it is improves the attendance and the learning outcomes of the learners. Okay, exclusively in urban poor areas. Okay, even in urban areas also, there are poor people having less economic power and less accessibility to varieties of facilities available in the nearby areas. So to improve the standard of living and to improve their educational levels also. So this is a must that needs to be created in the school level. And 6.6 talks about certain geographical areas contain significantly larger proportions of SCDG groups. There are geographical locations that have been identified as aspirational district which record interventions for promoting their educational development. Okay, as I said earlier also. So in that geographical area, one particular group of SCDGs are there. So it may be a dominant population of scheduled caste, population dominance of scheduled tribe, or it may be a population dominance of minority community. So if such things are there, dominant social group is existing there, even in that locations also, in that geographical locations also, which have been identified as aspirational district, a deliberate attempt must be there to promote their educational developments. So that is what the policy is aiming at. Then it is recommended that regions of the country with large population from economically disadvantaged SCDGs should be declared as special education zones. Okay, so we have heard about this SEZ in the industrial sector. So it is called as special economic zones there in industrial sector where government gives land at a subsidized rate, provides electricity, provides connectivity, provides water facilities at a reasonable rate with the intention that those industries provide employment opportunity for the nearby villages. So it is in that way they promote SEZ areas in industrial sectors. Similarly, the policy is talking about wherever large population of SEDGs are there, then it must be declared as special education zones. So in that zone, they talk about creating the more number of schools with all required empowered facilities. Okay, and therefore this must be addressed and it must be catered to in a very rigorous manner. Okay, and so that by doing all these things, the landscape and the educational landscape of that district will also be changing over a period of time. So it is in that way the policy is insisting of creating special education zones in the SCDG concentrated areas. So in 6.7, it talks about women's cut across all underrepresented groups. Okay, women's are underrepresented groups. So that means if you take in our Indian society, women are not given equal power, equal treatment. So the society has to change their stand and then equal participation has to be empowered. So in that case also SCDG must be focused on empowerment of women. And we know that our parliament has passed Empowerment of Women Bill with 33% reservation in People's Representation Act. And even it has also given some percentage kept reserved for women employment also in varieties of sectors. So all these are to make the women be par with the men, and it is to be treated as gender is equal. So we cannot make the distinction based on the gender. So though our society is male dominant society in Indian context, so we need to shift that and go towards gender equity society. So it is in from that perspective. So they say that women empowerment, women education must be given much more importance. So it is in that way they say that. So it says that it recognizes the special and critical role that women play in society and in social mores. And we also know that we say that mother is the first teacher at home, and she teaches the child with the culture, with the traditions, and she also influences the entire family. But still, she has not been given an equal treatment in the society, other activities. So it is in that context they feel that women empowerment and providing a quality education to girls is the best way to increase the levels of this women's SEDG group. Okay, but it is not only in the present generation, but it should also look into the future generation that we need to look at. So it is from that perspective, it is talking about empowerment of girls education through varieties of schemes and procedure. In 6.8, it talks about creation of gender inclusion fund to build the capacity to provide equitable quality education for all girls as well as transgender students. Okay, so that means here, so there must be the government of India and the state governments are going to create a gender inclusion fund. So that could be used exclusively for the quality education of girls or quality education of transgender students also. So there is a special fund that the policy is envisaging and to be created to promote girl child education and transgender education. The fund will be available to states to implement priorities determined by the central government for assisting female and transgender children in gaining access to education. So this is the central government fund. From that fund, state will get their own share, and the state has to use that fund only for creating these kinds of facilities for girl child and transgender students. Okay, so that such as providing sanitations and toilets, providing bicycles, providing conditional cash transfers, etc., are the other schemes that we can try to look at it. Now, even in Karnataka, to promote this girl child education in the normal school also, the government is providing sanitary pads at free of cost in the schools, so that this will not embarrass them during the adolescent period, and they are able to overcome those challenges and try to attend the class in a regular manner. Okay, and for insisting that girl child must have a separate toilet. So it is in that perspective, every school must have separate toilets for boys and girls exclusively. And whenever the scholarships are given and various conditions can be imposed, and if all those conditions are fulfilled, then the cash can be transferred directly into their accounts. So DBT can be adopted for transferring of the cashes and empowering the women in economical perspective also. The fund will also enable states to support and scale effective community-based intervention, okay, to the local context specific barriers to female and transgender children. Okay, if there are anything that needs to be supported or to bridge community-based interventions to be promoted for all such things, to remove varieties of barriers that are there in the systems, for all those things also, these funds can be utilized. So it can be through awareness program, it can be through sensitization program. So these activities can be looked at. So it also talks about providing free boarding facilities will be built, matching the standard of Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas. Okay. So, we know them. They have been recognized as JNVs, which are there in every district throughout the country, except in Tamil Nadu. So, where they are catering to the rural talented children, and they have been provided with free education, free food, and accommodation facilities. So, and also they are trying to provide the quality education. So, in the same line of JNV, the policy insists that the government should come out and build those kinds of boarding facilities which are going to be free. Okay, so they must be given free to the girl child. Okay, where student may come from far off places, particularly for students of socio-economically disadvantaged backgrounds, a suitable arrangement for safety and security of children, especially the girls. Okay, so it is in that way. You can also see that many of the departments are constructing their own hostel facilities for the specific socio-economically disadvantaged group categories, and in which these facilities are given free of cost. And now to promote the girls' education in particular, the policy talks about enhancing and strengthening the KGVBs that are there, Kasturiba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas. So it has been exclusively created to support the girls' education in a residential setup. So where now earlier with the KGVBs were there up to class 10th, now they have been increased up to grade 12. And these are exclusively for socio-economically disadvantaged background girls children who are there. And now these KGVBs are running in three formats. The one format is where they are running in their own building, having the same residential setup and classroom activities there. And in a second type, they have only these classrooms running, and the residential is provided in a different hostels by different agencies. It is there. And in the third one, the only hostels have been run and children are enrolled into nearby regular schools. So these kinds of things are happening, but their policy insists that creating exclusive KGVB schools up to class 12. So empowering the girls' education to the maximum extent. So it is in that way the policy talks about these kinds of issues. So it is in that line, it talks about creation of additional JNVs, additional Kendriya Vidyalayas will be built around and especially in aspirational district, in special educational zones and other disadvantageous areas, including high quality educational. So for that they are going to provide high educational qualities. So Kendriya Vidyalayas are created for central government employees. So where they get transferred during any period of the academic year, and that their children should not be discontinued from the educational opportunities. So it is to facilitate them. So Kendriya Vidyalayas are opened across different central agencies, exclusively in the defense sector, in the telephone sector. All these Kendriya Vidyalayas are functioning. Now it has been now extended to not only in those central government sector, it has to be created even in the special education zones, even in the aspirational districts, even though those kinds of central organizations are not functioning in the states, that needs to be looked at. And the policy considers this JNV and KVs as the standard setting schools in the country. And they are assuming to be providing quality education, and the learners are acquiring the required competencies and they demonstrate the learning outcomes envisaged in the policy. So it is in that way the policy visualizes that, and it says that creation of these many more Kendriya Vidyalayas and JNVs across the districts, in not only in a central organization dominated areas, even beyond that also to be established. Preschool sections covering at least 1 year of early child care and education will be opened in Kendriya Vidyalayas. Okay, you might be aware that all Kendriya Vidyalayas, all Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas have become PM Shri schools. So it is an initiative of the government which gives additional fund to equip the schools with additional learning resource materials which they require. So converting every classroom into a smart board classrooms and equipping them with Atal tinkering labs and also providing varieties of other technological advancements which are essential for teaching learning process. So even that is also visualized in the scheme of PM Shri schools. So it is in that way you might be seeing that every Kendriya Vidyalayas are being converted into PM Shri Kendriya Vidyalayas, and similarly Navodaya Vidyalayas are becoming into PM Shri JNV schools in a phased manner. And even the policy also insists that at least 1 year of early child care education. The policy talks about 5 years of foundational stage education. The first 3 years, they call it as the preschool education. So among those first three years of education, at least 1 year of the early child care education must be there in the KV schools, so that the children who are there in that 1 year will automatically get admitted into first standard for a regular formal school setup. So it is in that way the policy insists that the KV schools in future will be having at least 1 year of early child care education functioning or happening in their KV school premises itself. So it is in that way the policy looks at the setting up of the standards by considering the same schools and equipping them with the added informations.